Chapter 231. In fact, you just forgot about me. Why do you say that? As the lights dimmed, Huo Liancheng looked at Jian Yun. The light from the street lamps shone through the window and onto her face. The extinguished shadow was dancing, making her originally gentle face look more mysterious. I suddenly know you. You suddenly took me to the hospital, and then suddenly met me in the Mings. There was an accident in the elevator. Suddenly. Jian Yun counted with her fingers. You suddenly got angry at me and scolded me. Then you suddenly appeared in the clubhouse and suddenly we went to get our marriage certificate. That night you suddenly ridiculed me, suddenly fell sick, suddenly went on a business trip, and then... Jian Yun bit her lips and looked at the traffic in front of her in a dilemma. Is this what you think about every day in your head? Huo Liancheng was a little dizzy from Jian Yun's sudden speech. He shook his head and sighed helplessly. Why care so much? Just remember one thing. I came for you. Don't say that. Jian Yun lowered her eyelids and pouted. I am under a lot of pressure. Then let bygones be bygones. Let bygones be bygones. Let bygones be bygones. Huo Liancheng stopped the car at the red light in front of him. He reached out to hold Jian Yun's hand. But bygones will upset me and the future will confuse me. Jian Yun said in a low voice. What do you mean by what happened in the past? Huo Liancheng paused and said, I said I would tell you about my part, but not now. That's why I feel uneasy. Jian Yun stammered. Huo Liancheng tightened his grip on his palm. When the signal light turned green, 3 seconds later, he said, Actually, you just don't know me. Jian Yun's eyes twitched when she heard him. She always felt that Huo Liancheng's words seemed to be hinting at something. But when she wanted to ask, she found that Huo Liancheng's handsome face had darkened. He was focused on driving and did not seem to be willing to continue. If you keep talking halfway, you will die of anxiety. Jian Yun complained. Why don't you give it to me tonight, and I'll tell you. Huo Liancheng saw Jian Yun's conflicted expression and could not help but coax her again. Give what? Jian Yun asked casually and immediately reacted. She quickly glared. Dream on. I remember you said yourself that you don't care about me. Can you not mention what happened in the past? At that time, wasn't it to trick you to sign? Huo Liancheng was helpless. Oh, you lied to me, Huo Liancheng said. Jian Yun was shocked. Yes, I lied to you to sign. Actually, I really care about you. Why else should I look for you everywhere? Huo Liancheng should not have said these things to Jian Yun, but he found that this bastard's mind was different from others. Keeping it hidden made her dislike it. It was better to say everything. Anyway, she could not escape from his palm now. Jian Yun felt that she should have been angry, but when she heard Huo Liancheng being so honest, she felt embarrassed to say it, especially when he said that he cared for her. This made her vanity feel a little satisfied. Why do I feel that you are becoming more and more shameless? Jian Yun took a long time to say something. It is not the same as what I remember. What do you think of me? Huo Liancheng asked. I told you not to be angry. Jian Yun rolled her eyes and thought about what to say. Okay. Jian Yun hesitated for a long time but still shook her head in the end. Forget it. It's better not to say anymore. Otherwise you will definitely anger me again. Speak, I won't be angry at you. Huo Liancheng wanted to know what he looked like in Jian Yun's eyes. He would not let go of this opportunity. I told you. Jian Yun coughed twice and quickly said, Bullshit. Arrogance, coldness, boredom, tyranny, and even randomly kissing me. Every time you kiss me, it makes me feel so uncomfortable. Stop. Huo Liancheng turned the steering wheel and stepped on the brakes. With the urgent sound of the brakes, he parked the car by the roadside. He turned his body and stared at Jian Yun. His handsome face was very ugly, and his tone became cold. Do you think I have so many flaws in your heart? No. Jian Yun knew that Huo Liancheng would be unhappy when he heard these words. She had thought of a way to deal with it. She deliberately narrowed her eyes and grinned. Actually, what I said was not on you. Huo Liancheng's mouth twitched. What about the last sentence? Do you feel bad every time I kiss you? This sentence made him even more concerned. It was as if he was doubting his ability. It's not every time. Jian Yun's face turned red. Her eyes were also drifting and dodging. She had just been focused on complaining and did not think much before saying it. Now that Huo Liancheng was staring at this sentence, she did not know how to reply. Her skin was not thick enough to freely discuss these intimate matters with him. Huo Liancheng was very depressed. He drove the car to the main road again, but he did not say anything the entire way. Jian Yun noticed that Huo Liancheng was not walking home and could not help but ask, Where to? Huo Liancheng ignored her. Are you angry? Jian Yun felt the pressure in the car was very low. She was more or less used to Huo Liancheng's bad temper and was not as afraid as before. No, Huo Liancheng's voice was very low. You asked me to tell you. Jian Yun glanced at him. You said you wouldn't be angry. I'm not angry. He was indeed not angry. Jian Yun was willing to tell him this. At least it meant that her sense of strangeness and distance from him had disappeared. She would definitely not discuss the comfort of kissing with someone she did not like. He was just a little depressed. Then where are you taking me? Jian Yun asked again. To see your mother, Huo Liancheng said. While they were talking, Jian Yun could already see the sign of the First People's Hospital of Qinghu City on the top of the hospital building. Why did you suddenly remember to see my mother? Jian Yun had not come for 2 days. She originally planned to come back after work. Isn't your mother my mother-in-law? I came to see what's wrong with her. Huo Liancheng drove the car into the hospital and turned his head to look at Jian Yun. There was no expression on his handsome face, but his words were very natural. Jian Yun's brain short-circuited. After a long time, she said a few words. Fake son-in-law. Real son-in-law. Huo Liancheng emphasized again. I have proof. Jian Yun had nothing to say. At this time it was about 6 o'clock and the sky was already dark. The hospital was brightly lit. People were coming and going in the hospital building. Huo Liancheng parked the car and walked with Jian Yun to the special care building. The combination of handsome men and beautiful women naturally attracted many people's attention. Just as they passed through the path between the flower beds, Jian Yun suddenly saw a familiar figure in front of her. She squinted her eyes and saw that the person turned around. It was Xu Haiyan's mother. Jian Yun could not help but frown. Why was Xu Haiyan's mother in the hospital? She did not look like she was sick. Could it be that someone in her family was sick? But wasn't the Xu family in Boshan? She had never heard that Xu Haiyan's family had relatives in Green Lake. Chapter 232. Can you feel at ease? Perhaps she was here to visit her sick friend, but Jian Yun did not think too much about it. She pulled Huo Liancheng along and walked another path because she did not want to meet Mrs. Xu. From the incident 6 years ago to the last time she was in the hospital, Mrs. Xu repeatedly humiliated her. She had not had a good impression of this woman, who she used to see as her mother-in-law. Isn't that Jian Yun? Jian Yun, wait! Just as Jian Yun turned around, she heard someone calling her from behind. She turned her head and saw that it was a slightly plump, middle-aged man. She recognized this man as well. He was Xu Haiyan's father, the director of a certain department in Boshan City. Since Jian Yun was recognized, it was not good for her to just leave. She could only stand there and nod at her father. She greeted him but called him out. Uncle Xu. It really is you. I look like you from afar? Why did you come back so late to see your mother? Xu Zhongwei smiled and asked Jian Yun, but his eyes fell on Huo Liancheng. Yes, Uncle Xu. If there's nothing else, I will leave first. Jian Yun smiled faintly. Xu Zhongwei had treated her pretty well in the past, but after that incident, although his attitude towards her did not change drastically like Mrs. Xu's, it was not much better. Why are you in such a hurry to leave? Xu Zhongwei smiled kindly. He looked at Huo Liancheng and then asked Jian Yun. Jian Yun, this is? Aren't you going to introduce her to Uncle? My boyfriend. Jian Yun could tell that Xu Zhongwei had been staring at Huo Liancheng from the beginning. He could not hide the passion in his eyes. Mrs. Xu probably told him what happened in the hospital the last time she went back, but Jian Yun did not want to introduce Huo Liancheng to him. She just nodded and took Huo Liancheng's hand and left. Jian Yun, is this Mr. Huo? Xu Zhongwei's eyes lit up when he got confirmation, and then a complicated expression flashed across his face. He hurriedly walked a few steps to block the two of them. He extended his hand to Huo Liancheng and smiled. Mr. Huo, I have heard a lot about you. Xu Zhongwei, director of Boshan Human Society. Huo Liancheng had only glanced at Xu Zhongwei when he heard Jian Yun call him Uncle Xu from the start. When he saw Jian Yun reach out her hand, his handsome face did not move, nor did he move. Xu Zhongwei's hand was frozen there. Jian Yun had long known that it would be like this and she was used to it. She only explained, Uncle Xu, he does not like to interact with strangers. Shh, how arrogant is he? Does he really think that he is someone important? Ah, if he doesn't like to interact with strangers, then why doesn't he cut off the breathing of strangers? Before Xu Zhongwei could open his mouth, Mrs. Xu, who had already noticed him, could not help but walk over and ridicule him. Shut up, Xu Zhongwei hurriedly rebuked. Uncle Xu, we're leaving now. Jian Yun did not bother with Mrs. Xu at all, especially after Xu Haiyan told her that Mrs. Xu had an affair the last time. She looked down on her even more. Don't, Jian Yun, can we find a place to sit down and chat? Xu Zhongwei caught up with her again. I have something to ask of you. Uncle Xu, we don't have anything to talk about. My ability is weak. I'm afraid there's nothing I can help you with. Jian Yun stopped walking and was already somewhat impatient. When she broke up with Xu Haiyan, her mother was seriously injured and hospitalized. She spent all her savings and was chased out by her father. When she had nowhere to go and borrow money, she had also looked for Xu Zhongwei. However, his attitude toward her was neither warm nor cold. He first said that he would think of a way, but then he closed the door and disappeared. Jian Yun knew that even a tiger would be bullied by a dog, let alone a powerless little girl like her. It was normal for Xu Zhonghui not to care about her. But since he was so heartless back then, now that he had something to ask her for help, why would she help him? Jian Yun, don't be shameless. We are talking to you nicely. What kind of attitude is this? Mrs. Xu was used to being high and mighty. When she saw Jian Yun, she was used to it. He was angry at her for not giving her face. This is my attitude. Haven't you already seen it before? Jian Yun glanced at Mrs. Xu, and her tone became even colder. You, Mrs. Xu was about to flip out. Shut up, go to the side. Xu Zhonghui pushed her to the side, and at the same time, he said in a low voice, Don't you want the ocean to get better? When Mrs. Xu heard this, her expression suddenly changed. Although the gaze she looked at Jian Yun was still fierce, she did not dare to say any more malicious words, and stood by the side while enduring the humiliation. Jian Yun instead looked at Xu Zhonghui. Her intuition told her that there was something in his words. What did he mean by, he did not want Xu Haiyan to get better? Jian Yun, I know we wronged you in the past, we apologize to you, don't worry. Xu Zhonghui rubbed his hands and glanced at Huo Liancheng, who had a cold face but seemed absent-minded. He thought about it for a long time before saying, Haiyan is hospitalized because of something. Can you go and see him? Xu Haiyan is hospitalized? Jian Yun heard him and her hand trembled. But she immediately realized that her hand was holding Huo Liancheng's hand. She quickly calmed down and said calmly, I have nothing to do with him. It is not appropriate for me to go and see him. I think the person you are looking for now is Lin Lanlan. Jian Yun, why are you so heartless? Hi, and you have a good life, so what if you go and see him? Mrs. Xu anxiously pointed at Jian Yun and scolded. Shut up. Xu Zhonghui was afraid that she would randomly speak again and angered Jian Yun, so he hurriedly pulled her back and said to Jian Yun with a smile, Jian Yun, did you misunderstand something? Haiyan and Lin Lanlan have never been together before. Why are we looking for him? Moreover, Haiyan wants to see you. Huo Liancheng could not take I anymore. You tricked my girlfriend to see her ex-boyfriend in front of me. Do you think I died? His voice was low and cold, but it could not be ignored. It carried a strong pressure that immediately shocked the Xu couple. Mrs. Xu looked at Huo Liancheng with a face full of dissatisfaction. Xu Zhonghui knew Huo Liancheng's identity and status and could not help but feel somewhat embarrassed. At the same time, he also blamed Mrs. Xu for offending Jian Yun. Also, how could Xu Haiyan be blind? Even Huo Liancheng had taken a fancy to Jian Yun. It could be imagined that this girl must have something extraordinary. No matter what, she was better than that White Lotus Lin Lanlan who only knew how to act pitiful and innocent. I'm sorry, Mr. Huo. We were also in a rush. Please pity the parents of the world. We don't have any other intentions. It's just that. Xu Zhonghui wanted to explain. I'm sorry, Uncle Xu, I won't go. Jian Yun interrupted Xu Zhonghui. She did not want to waste any more time. My mother is still waiting for us. That's it. Goodbye. Jian Yun? Xu Zhonghui gritted his teeth and did not say anything in the end. He was also anxious and was afraid that he could not find Jian Yun. That was why he asked her to see Xu Haiyan. He had forgotten how scary Jian Yun's current boyfriend was. Jian Yun, Xu Haiyan got into a car accident because of you. Now his legs are broken and his head is injured. If anything happens to him, will your conscience be at ease? Mrs. Xu saw that Jian Yun was so heartless and shouted angrily. Chapter 233. The Wonderful Brain. Mrs. Xu's voice was very loud. There were many people on the road and many people looked over. When Jian Yun heard these words, she felt a surge of anger surge into her heart. She turned her head and said angrily, Don't put all the dirty water on my head. I have nothing to do with Xu Haiyan, and I have not seen him for a long time. What does his car accident have to do with me? I think you guys better go back and look at him now. Be careful that your precious son is taken to bed by another woman. You. Mrs. Xu pointed at Jian Yun. She wanted to say something but was grabbed by Zhonghui. Jian Yun, don't listen to your Aunt Xu's nonsense. Actually, he. Xu Zhonghui still wanted to explain. All right, are you done? Huo Liancheng was already very impatient. He walked a few steps and saw Jian Yun still standing there with her mouth full of anger. So he walked back a few steps and flicked her forehead with his finger. Are you still going? Go. Jian Yun came back to her senses and ignored Xu Zhonghui and his wife's hesitation. She turned her head and followed Huo Liancheng's footsteps. Jian Yun, can you think about it again? Xu Zhonghui still did not give up. Why are you looking for her? Didn't you see her arrogant appearance? What tutor? She actually speaks to her elders like this. So what if she has a rich boyfriend? She is still a broken shoe that Xu Haiyan has played with before. Mrs. Xu deliberately raised her voice at the end of her sentence. Mr. Huo, you are a respectable person. Don't be fooled by this girl's appearance. In fact, she... Mrs. Xu did not finish her sentence before she was slapped. Idiot, do you still think that you have not lost enough people? Xu Zhonghui lowered his head and glared at Mrs. Xu. His eyes were filled with cold anger. Or do you want to kill Haiyang? Mrs. Xu covered her face and her hair was messy, but she did not say anything. She just gritted her teeth and suppressed her anger. On the other side, when Jian Yun heard Mrs. Xu's words, she was also very angry. She was just about to retort when Huo Liancheng suddenly wrapped his arms around her neck. He held her and walked forward, not letting her speak, but he said, No matter what she used to be, I do not care. If I am willing, can you care? Jian Yun heard him and suddenly felt a warm feeling in her chest filled with anger. She raised her head to look at Huo Liancheng. Under the street lamp, half of his face was hidden in the shadows, but his eyes were especially deep and deep, like a deep valley and a deep pool. There was a glimmer of light in his eyes. Why are you looking at me like that? Huo Liancheng noticed the strange look in Jian Yun's eyes and lowered his head to ask, You really don't care? Jian Yun did not believe him. No, I care. Huo Liancheng stared into Jian Yun's eyes and spoke slowly. His voice was low, like the sound of a violin. Jian Yun heard him and her hands trembled. She lowered her eyes and smile appeared at the corner of her mouth. Wasn't the reason why he had been angry at her a few times before, all because he suspected that her private life was not clean? How could he not care? But Hu Liancheng paused for a moment and said, although Jian Yun hid it well, he still found the disappointment on her face when she heard him say she cared. There was a trace of complexity in the disappointment, and she seemed to be secretly relieved. It was really puzzling. But what? Jian Yun did not expect that Hu Liancheng still had something to say before he finished. She raised her eyebrows and asked again. But because it's you, I don't care. Hu Liancheng lowered his voice and said. Jian Yun was a little confused. This sentence sounded very familiar. It was as if he had told her the same thing at the cinema that time, because it was her. So it doesn't matter. Jian Yun was more and more confused. What did she do to make him care so much about her? Since Ouyang Fei lived on the second floor, Jian Yun and Hu Liancheng always took the stairs every time they came. They had just taken a few steps and had been thinking about what kind of entanglement she and Hu Liancheng had with each other. Jian Yun could not help but ask quietly, 6 years ago, I remember one time I drank too much. Hu Liancheng turned his head to look at Jian Yun. Did I drink too much and sleep with you? Then you thought that my skills were very good, so you could not forget me? Jian Yun's imagination was wild. She really didn't know why Hu Liancheng cared so much about her, so she could only guess blindly. Hu Liancheng thought Jian Yun had thought of something, but he did not expect it to be such an unreliable guess. The corner of his mouth twitched. He barely suppressed the urge to hit her head and said sarcastically, Don't you know if you slept with me? I drank too much. How can I remember? Jian Yun turned around and thought to herself that it was fortunate that the lights in the corridor were very dark. Otherwise, she would have been so embarrassed that she wanted to find a hole to hide in. Fortunately, he did not see her red face. So you want to tell me that you're very skilled? In silence, Hu Liancheng suddenly asked. Jian Yun could not answer him. She could only pretend that she did not hear him. Fortunately, they had also arrived on the second floor. The two of them walked out of the stairwell. Jian Yun was afraid that Hu Liancheng would notice the redness on her face, so she quickly sped up and rushed into Ouyang Fei's ward. After entering the washroom, she used cold water to wash her face. She felt that her IQ and EQ had been worrying recently. She could actually say that kind of thing. It was really hopeless. When Jian Yun came out of the washroom, she saw that Hu Liancheng had already come in and was sitting in front of Ouyang Fei's bed, talking to her. She only saw him leaning lazily on the chair with his 10 fingers crossed. His usually expressionless, tall and cold, handsome face actually carried a faint smile at this time. Ouyang Fei was half sitting on the bed. Her already blood-red face also had a smile. It seemed that the two of them were having a good chat. Yunduo, come over. Ouyang Fei saw Jian Yun and waved at her. Hu Liancheng also looked at Jian Yun and the corner of his mouth curled up. There was a hint of ridicule in his eyes. Jian Yun just pretended not to see it. Mom? Jian Yun walked over and sat on the bed, hugging Ouyang Fei. You guys haven't eaten yet, right? I asked Auntie to make dinner. I was waiting for you guys to eat together. Ouyang Fei's speech was a little smoother than before. She seemed to be in good spirits. Jian Yun looked at Hu Liancheng in surprise. She had already guessed that he must have called her mother in advance. That was why her mother would wait for them to come and eat together. Did he do this to get closer to the two of them, or to curry favor with her mother? Yunduo, what are you still standing there for? Quickly help Auntie set up the table. The dishes are all hot in the pot. Ouyang Fei saw that Jian Yun was still in a daze and could not help but scold. Jian Yun gave an "oh" and quickly went over to work. It was very common dishes, and Ouyang Fei was good at it. She could not get up, and presumably, it was she who instructed Auntie to cook. The taste was a little different, but it still made Jian Yun feel very at home. But she also thought that if it was not for Hu Liancheng, perhaps her mother would have already passed away, and she would not even have the last hope of life. After the meal, they stayed for a while, and then Jian Yun and Hu Liancheng left. When they returned to the car, neither of them spoke. Hu Liancheng noticed that Jian Yun had been looking out the window in a daze. She was a little absent-minded during dinner tonight. Therefore, she still cared about Xu Haiyan. Chapter 234. A Powerful Mother-in-Law. Hu Liancheng was not a careful person, but when Mrs. Xu said that Xu Haiyan was in a car accident, he clearly felt Jian Yun's hand tremble, so she still cared. Otherwise, she would not be absent-minded all night. She did not even hear her mother asking her a few times. This thought made Hu Liancheng feel very uncomfortable. It was as if there was a fishbone stuck in his throat, choking until he felt uncomfortable. Jian Yun had been holding her chin and looking at the traffic outside the car window. She was thinking about something, so she did not notice Hu Liancheng's unusual behavior at all. In the silence, after an unknown period of time, Jian Yun found the car stop. She turned around and saw the underground garage. Jian Yun was also stunned. Hu Liancheng had already pushed open the door and got out of the car. Jian Yun quickly got out of the car and followed him. Even when she entered the house, Hu Liancheng did not say anything. But his expression did not change much, so Jian Yun did not think much about it. After all, it was rare for him to smile a few times a day. This kind of cold expression was his standard. Huo Liancheng entered the study as soon as he came back. Jian Yun took a glance and saw that he had turned on the computer. He was probably going to work again, so she did not disturb him. She took her clothes and went to take a shower first. After she came out, she rested her. Jian Yun sent a message to her, Wu Wenjing, Luo Yanyan, and Mo Xiaolin's small group. Wu Wenjing quickly replied, "What is it?" Luo Yanyan also replied with a bored expression. Jian Yun thought about it and sent a private message to Wu Wenjing. "I met Xu Haiyang's parents at the hospital that night. They said Xu Haiyang had a car accident. Do you know?" After a long while, Wu Wenjing replied, "Yes. I don't know. I've been busy buying goods recently, and I don't pay much attention to these gossips." Jian Yun knitted her brows and took the phone to send it to a daze for a while, but did not continue to look for people to ask about this matter. She saw Wu Wenjing ask, "What is the matter? Is it serious?" "I don't know. I did not ask and almost quarreled with my mother." Wu Wenjing, "My mother is a shrew and a small townsfolk. Ignore her. Right? Jian Yun, the skincare products you ordered have arrived. When you have time to come out and gather, I will bring it to you." Okay. At this time, Luo Yanyan sent a few emojis in the four people's group. At the same time she asked, "Where is she?" "Jian, did you run away after flirting with her?" Jian replied, "Yan, you are the new bride. Why are you so free? Shouldn't you be busy right now?" Luo Yanyan replied with a bitter expression. Jian felt that was strange. "You are not afraid of marriage, are you?" "Luo Yanyan, I want to break off the marriage." Jian was surprised. "Why? Didn't Qingdong treat you well?" Wu Wenjing interrupted. "Unfortunately, he listens to his mother." Luo Yanyan. Jian frown deepened. She asked, "Yan, is your mother-in-law not good to you?" Luo Yanyan, "It's not bad either. It's just that she has to take care of everything. My mom also wants to take care of everything. Now, it's really noisy." This time, Jian was speechless. "Why did your mom get involved too?" Luo Yanyan seemed to be very depressed. It was hard to say a word. It was not convenient to say it here. Let's talk about it when we meet. Wu Wenjing, "Yan, you have to think it through. That old witch was so strong before you got married. When you get married, you will feel even worse." Wu Wenjing, "Don't scare Yan. Things will not be so bad." Wu Wenjing said, "Yun, there are many things that you do not know. Why don't we find a time to meet tomorrow night?" Jian Yun was about to agree when Luo Yanyan said, "My relatives will come over tomorrow night. I don't think I can leave." Wu Wenjing sent a sigh emoji. "Yan, I have already told you everything that needs to be said. Think about it carefully and do not regret it in the future." Luo Yanyan only replied after a long time, "I know. First off, you guys can chat." The more Jian Yun thought about it, the more she felt that something was wrong. She quickly opened Wu Wenjing's dialogue box and asked, "What's going on?" Wu Wenjing sent a voice message. "Yanyan's mother-in-law is too powerful. Qingdong was taken care of since he was young. He transferred back from the army. After so many years, a grown man actually gave all his salary to his mother. Then the old woman also asked Yanyan to give her her salary card. Yanyan did not do it, and the old woman got angry. Yanyan's mother suddenly ran over and said that she raised her daughter that much and spent a lot of money to nurture her into university. She said about Yanyan's salary card." When Jian Yun heard this, she was already completely shocked. Luo Yanyan's mother was really not good enough and was not good enough. Jian Yun then clicked on Wu Wenjing's next few voice messages and heard Wu Wenjing's sigh over there. "Sigh, Jian Yun, you said Luo Yanyan? Was her mother stupid?" Yanyan's salary was stuck in her job. If Yanyan didn't say anything, no one would know. She was actually afraid that others would not know, but she came to make it public. This was good. Qingdong's mother had exploded. Moreover, Yanyan's mother did not do this right. I asked Yanyan about it. When she just got her salary card, her mother used the excuse that she did not have money to see a doctor and asked her to put her salary card in her hands for 2 or 3 months. Yanyan did not want to do it. You also know her mother. She only had snot and tears. She was not greedy for Yanyan's money. Why was Yanyan so ruthless? She did not care if her parents were dead or alive. Yanyan's heart softened and told her the password. In the end, the salary card became her mother's, and she would not be able to get it back. Yanyan had asked for it many times, and she was scolded badly. In a fit of anger, she lost the card and restarted the new card. Then her parents and her younger brother all rushed over and scolded Yanyan when they caught her. Yanyan was also afraid of trouble and surrendered again. Sigh, I really want to knock Luo Yanyan's head open and see why she is so easy to lie to. Jian Yun only knew that Luo Yanyan's salary was handed to her mother every month but did not know that her salary card was taken away. She could not help but sigh. Sigh, Yanyan's character is also related to the family education she received since she was young. There is a spoiled younger brother in the family who has no principles and prioritizes men over women. She cannot resist unless she is not related to the family. But Yanyan is so kind, she would not do so. Wu Wenjing said, Yes, so the people who are annoying must have something pitiful. Jian Yun also shook her head. Then what about Yanyan now? Wu Wenjing said, This matter was originally Yanyan's mother's fault. When a daughter marries, she has her own family. It is not like your mother's family is too poor to take the blame. Why do you need the daughter to place the salary card at her place? Moreover, Qingdong's mother was not easy to deal with. It was fine if she did not know about this matter. Once she found out, it was Yanyan's mother who told her about it in front of her relatives. She could not swallow this anger. She slammed the table and said that if Yanyan's mother did not give her salary card to Yanyan, she would not be married. Jianyun was once again shocked. So forceful? In her opinion, although Luo Yanyan's mother did not do it right, marriage was between Luo Yanyan and Qingdong. What right did Qingdong's mother have to make this decision on behalf of her son? Chapter 235 Suffering. In Jianyun's opinion, although Luo Yanyan's mother did something wrong, the marriage was between Luo Yanyan and Qingdong. What right did Qingdong's mother have to make this decision on behalf of her son? Yes, they are still arguing. How could Yanyan's mother be willing to hand over the money tree? Wu Wenjing sneered. But I hope they will not get married. Why? Jianyun was surprised. She had too many things to do these days, and her thoughts were heavy. She had neglected her contact with Luo Yanyan and Wu Wenjing. She did not know that so many things had happened during this period of time. Qingdong's mother has a problem. His family's atmosphere is not good. Furthermore, Yanyan does not like him very much. She was forced by her mother. Now that her mother has caused such a thing, if Yanyan marries over, the days of suffering will come later. Wu Wenjing did not send a voice message anymore, and directly made a voice call with Jianyun. Yanyan does not like him. Why do you still want to marry him? Jianyun was completely stunned. What was going on? Jianyun, you also said Yanyan is weak. She was dragged down by her family too much, but she could not let go. In addition to the excitement of her ex-boyfriend getting married, she could not take it anymore. Sigh. Moreover, how many people in this world really get married because they are in love with each other? There are many people who get married because they want to get married and find a similar person to get married. Yanyan was this kind of person, but she had reached the age where she should get married. Qingdong was very suitable in all aspects, so they got married. You and I might have to do the same in the future. Wu Wenjing looked like a big sister who knew her heart and said while sighing, but can a marriage without feelings be maintained? Jianyun was still worried, but she immediately thought of her marriage with Huo Liancheng and could not help feeling a little sad. If you can't maintain it, then leave. In this society, no one can leave and no one can live. Wu Wenjing did not know what she was chewing on. Her words were a little slurred. Right, Jianyun, let me tell you. Men are all after his own mother. Once they quarrel, they will definitely help his mother. If they do not help you, then they will be angered to death if they meet a mother-in-law like Yanyan. So in the future when you get married, it is best to find someone whose parents died together. This kind of man, even if his condition is a bit worse, but in the future, you'll be less angry. What nonsense are you talking about? How can you find someone to use this as a benchmark? Jianyun immediately scolded Wu Wenjing for not covering her mouth. I'm just giving an example. Recently, I heard a few married friends complain that they are all not getting along well with their mother-in-law. Men do not even have any shit effect. They are simply angered to death. Wu Wenjing started to chew melon seeds again, and one after another. Jianyun's eyes turned and suddenly moved closer to her phone. She quietly said to Wu Wenjing, let me tell you a secret. What secret? Wu Wenjing was interested and stopped eating the melon seeds. She asked excitedly. I'm married, Jianyun said with a smile. You're married? With who? How come I don't know? When did this happen? Wu Wenjing asked a series of questions, her voice almost tearing apart. Huo Liancheng and I are married, Jianyun said calmly. Wu Wenjing was silent. Jianyun thought the line had gone off when she heard that there was no sound for a long time. She quickly asked a few questions. I'm listening, Wu Wenjing said. Okay, this is a secret. You have to keep it a secret, Jianyun said with a beaming smile and put her phone to the side. Sure enough, 3 seconds later, she heard Wu Wenjing scream. Jianyun, do you think I'm stupid? I won't believe you. You don't like President Huo. How can you two get married? Wu Wenjing roared. Didn't you say he likes me? If he wants to marry me, then we'll get married, Jianyun said. It's not that I look down on you. I don't believe a word you say. General Manager Huo likes you and treats you very well, but with President Huo's wealth and status, and looking at your status and family background, how could he possibly marry you? Wake up. Wu Wenjing spoke very quickly. She probably realized that her words were too direct and would make Jianyun unhappy, so she hurriedly asked, Don't tell me that you also want to get married because Yanyan got married? So you want to get married with President Huo? Let me tell you, Jianyun, don't be silly. You can talk about dating with General Manager Huo, but don't ever think about getting married. Wealthy families are not so easy to marry. Besides, President Huo looked at his face. He's a Prince Charming. Prince Charming is not allowed to marry. You're the only one who can say that. Jianyun pursed her lips in frustration. You're the only one who knows how to say that. Actually, she also knew that no one would believe her words. It was also because of this that she dared to speak to Wu Wenjing. However, when she heard Wu Wenjing giving her such a blow, she still felt very uncomfortable in her heart. What did she mean by her family background and identity? Did marriage have to depend on these things? All right, marriage does indeed have to depend on family background. It has to be a match of family background. Jian Yun supported her forehead. Although she really did not want to admit it, she still felt that what Wu Wenjing said was right. Jian Yun, don't be unhappy. Actually, I think that compared to General Manager Huo, Shu Haiyan and you are the same family. But he is too bad. His mother is even worse. It is not appropriate for him to talk to General Manager Huo first. Wait until he doesn't like you anymore. I will introduce you to a good man, Wu Wenjing said with a smile. Jian Yun was about to say Wu Wenjing when she subconsciously turned her head back. Out of the corner of her eye, she suddenly saw that the door of the study room had opened. A tall figure was leaning against the door with his arms crossed. He was looking at them leisurely. Jian Yun was immediately shocked. Her hand trembled, and she almost could not hold her phone steady. At this moment, she was already roaring in her heart. When did Huo Liancheng come out? Why didn't she notice it at all? It was over. She was still on her voice speaker. She didn't know how much she had heard. By the way, Jian Yun, let me tell you a secret. I heard from others that President Huo never got close to women. This isn't normal. So it is said that he is not a functional obstacle. It is just that he does not like women, so you have to be careful. Jian Yun heard that Wu Wenjing was still talking more and more enthusiastically. She quickly lowered her voice and quickly said, I'm not going to tell you anymore. I'm hanging up. After saying that, Jian Yun quickly hung up the voice call. After the phone was hung up, the room immediately quietened down. In the strange silence, Jian Yun felt uncomfortable all over. She comforted herself. Although she had just switched on the speaker, it was very quiet. Huo Liancheng was so far away, so he definitely did not hear it. When did you come out? Jian Yun saw that she was still lying on the sofa. Her posture was not serious, so she quickly got up and put on her shoes to stand by the side. Huo Liancheng was still looking at her, so it was not good for her to run back to the bedroom directly. She could only find something to say. From when you said you were going to find a man whose parents died and get married. Huo Liancheng shrugged and said very naturally.